Hello, BookTube. I thought we'd go through some books, new and old, that I don't think I've shown you or spotlighted anytime recently, including a lot of new arrivals, or not a lot, about a quarter of the new arrivals that I've gotten so far. Just a random assortment here, just because it's a Friday. The first one being something that we've seen on this channel before. This is Henry Treace's Jason, which is about Jason and the Argonauts. This has been on my mind. Jason and the Argonauts have been on my mind for an unrelated reason. But I haven't read this book. This novel came out 50 years ago, 1961, 60 years ago. And I've read it. I read it when it was new, and then I read it again in this paperback. Not this exact paperback, but I read this, and it fell apart on me as a very cheap thing. I found this again just recently. Last year? Yeah, about a year ago I found this and sort of chucked it away for Garb August, but I never got to it in Garb August, and I'm not sure that it's garbage. So I'll be rereading this. I'll be rereading Hercules, My Shipmate by Robert Graves. So that we can start off that way. Then we have some Marvel Epic collections. Marvel Comics is reprinting their vast back catalog with Epic collection volumes that are fairly hefty. They're thick. You get a lot of material in them, all in full color. They've also recently started a modern classics line so that they can reprint newer stuff. But the main Epic line bounces all over the place. You never know what's going to come out next. And there are a few, there are probably 4 Epic collections coming out between now and the end of the year that I very much like, that I very much want. I got 2 of them in the mail. I got this one. This is called The Crusader Syndrome, Fantastic Four Epic Collection number 9. There we have a classic Rich Buckler cover with the Thing about to fight the Hulk. The Crusader referenced here is a character who shows up when George Perez is drawing the book. That is the Crusader on the back. With a classic Jack Kirby cover. Jack Kirby came back to Marvel. He did the writing and the artwork on Captain America and the Black Panther, but he also did a whole bunch of covers. So for Marvel Comics, you have the classic era where Kirby did a lot of covers. And then you have a long gap where he was working for the competition, and then he came back and did a whole bunch of covers. There is a mistake on this cover. I wonder if any of you can spot it. Kind of weird, considering that it's a mistake by the guy who wrote the book, literally speaking. But also, very old-time comic book fans looked at this cover for the first time, yours truly included, and said, that costume looks awful familiar. And it took me a while. I remember when I brought this issue home, with a whole bunch of other stuff. I got a stack of comics every week. When I brought this issue home, it was bothering me the whole way back. I was complaining to my dogs the whole way back that I know that costume. Where do I know it from? And I told myself, the gimmick of this issue is going to be the big reveal. And I can steal a march on that gimmick if I can remember where I know that costume from. And you know what it took to get me to remember? Drawing it myself. I took out a piece of paper and started sketching someone wearing that costume, and I remembered. I remembered who this comic book character is, and knew immediately what the big reveal is going to be. And I was right. But this is such a fantastic, no pun intended, collection. This has so many great things in it. It has a couple of great annuals. It has the multi-part story where that we've talked about on this channel before, where Reed Richards and Sue Richards are flirting with the idea of divorce. And at the same time, Johnny Storm is dealing with the fact that his former girlfriend is going to marry someone else. And when we get to that storyline where Crystal, the Inhuman, is getting married in the Grand Refuge, the home of the Inhumans. She's getting married to Quicksilver, the brother of the Scarlet Witch. And when we got to that story, I assumed that the Fantastic Four Epic Collection would just reprint it, but they also reprint the Great Avengers issue that leads up to it. This is what I say. You get a lot in these Epic Collections. You get everything you would possibly want. But this issue has, among other things, for instance, there's a 4-part story in here where we meet an alternate world Ben Grimm, the Thing, that is really, really good. It's got the usual comic book fanfare and whatnot, but it's also really good as a story. But we also get, we get a 3-part story where the Fantastic Four teams up with the Silver Surfer in order to fight Doctor Doom. And this issue has a famous splash panel that I still don't know if it's intentional or not. It's Roy Thomas who wrote the issue, and he's usually really good. But there's a panel in here, as long as I've got the book in front of me, I might as well show it to you. There's a panel in here where the Human Torch swoops in to fight some of Dr. Doom's robots, and he says, meantime, the rest of us will take out the good doctor's Tinker Toys in what you call your one swell foop. Now, the term is one fell swoop, not one swell foop. And I have to wonder, did Roy Thomas put that in there intentionally? Just to sort of poke fun at Johnny Storm, who's not all that great in the brains department? Or did Roy Thomas legitimately mix that up? It's the kind of thing your brain would mix up. Did he maybe mix it up? They left it in. If they didn't fix it, and Roy Thomas is still alive, so they could have fixed it if they'd wanted to. But as to the cover story of the Thing and the Hulk together, let me get to those issues, because there's a thing that happens. Again, no pun intended. There's a thing that happens at the beginning of this issue that is amazing. It really does. To me, back when this came out, I forget when this came out, the 1970s, to judge by the Human Torch's bell bottoms. When this came out, the opening scene of this comic issue made me think about superhero teams. Not individual superheroes, just superhero teams. And judge them according to this standard. The standard that is it Roy Thomas? Yeah, that Roy Thomas puts out in this issue. Our characters are on board an airline. They're in a lounge on a normal commercial airliner. And they're talking about, what's the point of being superheroes when there are a whole bunch of other superhero teams out there? That, let the Avengers or those 37 other supergroups do all the world saving for a while. The Fantastic Four, in other words, are indulging in a bit of self-pity. When something happens out of the blue, the Hulk, who, as you know, can't fly. He does massive, mile-long leaps, but he can't fly. Out of pure random chance, he strikes their plane and destroys one of its wings. He doesn't even know. He barely feels it. He has no idea what he's done. And the plane is going down. See? Look at these George Perez pencils here. The Fantastic Four has to decide what to do. What do you do in a circumstance like this? The Thing is of no use. They have to figure out what to do. Can they save a plane that's going down without any loss of life? The Human Torch welds the panel closed, and Mr. Fantastic, Reed Richards, balloons himself out as a parachute behind the plane while the Human Torch provides thermal uplift in an attempt to balance things out and maybe get this thing to horizontal. And they managed to do it. Just barely. They managed to do it. That rescue sequence took place before Sue Richards got the major power upgrade that she now enjoys, or she could have done this on her own. Created an alternate wing out of her force field, created a cushioned landing pad for the plane out of her force field without breaking a sweat. But at this point, she's good for localized stuff. She can create a bouncy pad for the team, but not for the plane. And that incident, that moment in this issue made me wonder, what would other super teams do? Could other super teams save that plane without any loss of life? Could they do it? The Avengers, certainly. If Thor is on board, if Iron Man is on board, then certainly they could. But what about the original X-Men? I don't think they could. Marvel Girl's telekinesis is not strong enough, and no one else, maybe Iceman? The Angel can fly, but he doesn't have the kind of aeronautic lift to level out a 747. Iceman would probably be the only chance that plane would have. What about your favorite super team? Whoever they are, even if you're Michael K. Vaughan and you're now wondering about the Doom Patrol. Of course, the Legion could handle it easily. Anyway, that was one epic collection. And then I got another one. I got this one, The Mighty Thor. This is The Mighty Thor, Even an Immortal Can Die, Volume 9. This is Volume 9. And it includes a whole bunch of great stuff. Oh my. The title storyline is like 6 or 7 issues where a guy, just a normal human named Red, decides that he will become the mythological Thor. So he doesn't wear polka dots. He's got a red beard. He's got armor on. He seems like a Norse god, whereas Thor very much does not. The whole issue is designed to sort of draw attention to the fact that Thor does not look mythological. What happens if a guy is subsumed by the personality and the power of the mythological Thor and tries to take Thor's place? And it's wonderful. It's a really wonderful story. But it's beaten out in this issue by a whole bunch of things. One thing that I was incredibly pleased to notice in the back of this thing, here, let me show you. Marvel Comics did big black and white magazines at this time. And they tried their luck with all sorts of things. The Hulk had one, for instance. The Rampaging Hulk had a few issues that were particularly good. And it went on for a while, too. And Thor had a comic. Thor the Mighty. See that? In black and white. And they reprinted in this issue. But the signature thing for me in this issue, which I love so much. I love it so much. I go back to this all the time. When you talk about... Oh, I got to show you this panel. When you talk about Thor, one of the names that comes up right away is Walt Simonson, who had a long run on Thor as artist and writer that is widely regarded as one of the greatest runs on the character's history. Talked about it many times on this channel. Michael Tavon, I'm sure, would agree with me. We don't agree on everything with comics, but I'm sure he would agree. But that was not Walt Simonson's first foray into being a Thor artist. He was on the book before. And oh my, those issues were great. Look at this panel of Asgardian warriors just working on something. That is just amazing. Just eye-poppingly good. But the story that I'm thinking about, I did not realize that it was going to be included in this issue. And it is. There's a storyline here. I don't have to bother you with a lot of the specifics, but Loki, Thor's evil half-brother, has put a servitor, he's put a cat's paw into the indestructible armor of the Destroyer. Don't be fooled by the original Thor movie. The Destroyer is not vulnerable to attack. It is unbeatable. It's an unbeatable thing. Its vulnerability is that it has to be animated by a life force. And in the course of this huge battle in Asgard, Loki has control over the life force that's in the Destroyer, while Odin, the father of the gods, is naturally, conveniently enough, in the Odin sleep, so he cannot intervene. And at one point in the storyline, the two of them are racing. Thor and Loki are racing to see who can grab the armor of the Destroyer. The first one to touch it inhabits the armor and becomes incredibly powerful, can certainly kill the other. And much to Loki's dismay, it's Thor. Loki hits the Destroyer with everything he's got. It doesn't even cause the thing to halt by half a step. And it looks like the Destroyer is going to kill Loki with disintegration when a voice is heard. It's Odin, awake. And the Destroyer turns on him and starts menacingly stalking towards him. It will not disintegrate Loki now. It will disintegrate Odin. And people are calling out for Odin to get out of the way, to save himself, when Walt Simonson gives us this incredible panel, what happens next. Because, yes, the Destroyer, the armor, is built on destruction. But it's inhabited by the noblest Asgardian of them all, who kneels at his father's feet. Oh, man. Well, I read that panel when that thing first came out. I was verklempt. And I'm verklempt all over again. And now I don't have to worry about fishing out those issues. Now I have these issues, these two, with Epic Collections, as Michael Gavon could tell you. A lot of times they include a lot, but a lot of times what they include is not all that worthy of inclusion. They're just scooping up everything. These are 2 volumes where there is not a dud anywhere in. Even the issue where Thor fights the Stilt Man is good. So, very happy with those 2. And then we have some new books. This first one comes out in November. I've talked about it on this channel before. This is by Judith Tick, and it is Becoming Ella Fitzgerald. A new book about Ella Fitzgerald's career. Possessed one of the 20th century's most astonishing voices. In this first major biography since Fitzgerald's death, music historian Judith Tick draws on deep archival research, family interviews, and newly available recordings and concert footage to show how Fitzgerald fused a black vocal aesthetic with mainstream popular repertoire to revolutionize American music. I've already read this. I'm going to very happily read it a couple more times. I think it's really important. I have another book from November. This is by John Charles Chasteen, and it is called After Eden, A Short History of the World. It's a history of the world that's in what? Is this 300-something pages? 368 pages. Is going to have to pick and choose quite a bit. In this book, prominent Latin American historian John Charles Chasteen provides a concise history of the world in which he explores the origins and persistence of timeless phenomenon of humanity's inhumanity to itself. Where did it come from? Why has it been so prevalent throughout history? And most importantly, can we overcome it? Okay, if you're asking can we overcome it, you're not writing a history of the world. Could still be a good book, it's just being mismarketed, that's all. The author argues that to do so, we must understand our shared past, and that while much of it is violent, we can look for inspiration from major periods when we strive to live more cooperatively, such as our early foraging periods and the creation of the universal religions and ethical system. Live more cooperatively? Nothing has killed more humans than those universal religious and ethical systems. Nothing has been responsible for more death and misery than those religious systems. And to the birth of the ideas of individual liberty and freedom. You want to say the Enlightenment, don't you, Spanky? You just can't do it. You can't choke the word out. To the rise of socialism in response to massive excesses of global capitalism. Is that what socialism was a response to? Do tell. To the civil rights and decolonization movements of the 20th century, to the environmental and social justice movements of today. So, first of all, there was no Eden. It's a myth. It's a story that people told. It's a piece of mythology. And second, you see now the danger of this thing, right? I probably won't read this until I get the finished copy, but from that back cover copy, which keep in mind the author didn't necessarily write, from that back cover copy, this is going to be a new book that says that human history would have been absolutely hunky-dory if not for white people. And atheists. So we will see. We will see. I'm hoping for the best. A thing like this, it's obviously ideologically driven and also prescriptive. So it's not history. But who knows what it is. Maybe it will be really good. Then we have something, let me see, do I have a sheet for you? Yes, I do. This comes out in early October, which we're barreling towards, actually, now that I think about it. It's not all that far ahead in the future. This is In the Shadow of Fear, America and the World in 1950 by Nick Bunker. Terrific cover design there. Just terrific. Notice how much less effective this would be. You've got her face right there. That's what you're supposed to pay attention to. But notice how much less effective this cover design would be if this weren't down here. The fact that the banner is interrupting the photo really works in this case. Let's see here. This book tells the story of 10 fateful months in American and global history between the first Soviet atom bomb test in the late summer of 1949 and the outbreak of the Korean War in June 1950. The dawning of the Taiwan question, the rise of Senator Joe McCarthy, the birth of NATO, the hydrogen bomb, and the European Union are among the episodes Bunker describes in this innovative account of this pivotal moment in the Cold War. Ordinarily, as you know, if you're a longtime viewer of this channel, ordinarily I'm a little bit squinty-eyed about pivotal histories, but this is a fairly generous thing, and 1950 was a watershed, so I'm very much looking forward to it. I have a finished copy, so I will get to it right away. Then this next one is also a finished copy. I think we're finished copies all the way down from here on out. I don't have any sheet for this, so we'll just read the dust jacket. This might be a September release for all I know. This is by John Potter, and it's called Song, A History in 21 Parts. And it is a history of choral arrangements, of song. So not so much pop music songs, with a lowercase, but rather songs as a musical form. Let's see here. For as long as there have been humans, we have created song. Tantalizing glimpses that exist across history, from song passages in ancient epics to paintings and singing courtiers adorning Egyptian tombs. No other activity is as universal across human cultures and so widely enjoyed. Okay, is that true? Surely there were human cultures in prehistory where there was something universal, but it was smiling, not song. Maybe I'm wrong. And also, what about hominins that existed before humans or alongside them? How tantalizing that question is. Did they have song? In this celebratory account, acclaimed singer and author John Potter tells the European story. Song has thrilled audiences and captivated performers for centuries, from the music of the troubadours to Christian liturgy, through classical composers such as Bach and Schumann, up to Britain, Barrio, and the rise of popular music. So the chapters here are, let me give you a hint of what we have here. Hildegard von Bingen is first, then Bernard de Ventadorn, the troubadour poets. Let's see here, we've got Joaquin Desprez, Cipriano de Rore. We've got John Dowland. That'll be interesting for a number of reasons for me. Barbara Strozzi, Robert Schumann, George Butterworth, George Gershwin. The chapter is titled Summertime. Benjamin Britten, Luciano Berio, and then a chapter about the history and the future of song. So, you music fans out there, especially if you've got a music fan on your list, this is new. Not everybody peruses new release titles the way I do. They might not know this exists. Might want to put that on your list to think of something to get them. This next one gets the award this time around for my favorite cover for a couple of different reasons. This is just a terrific cover. Let's see here. I have a sheet for this. This comes out in late September, so this will go on the list for tonight. This is by Thomas Muchhauser, and it's called The Common Flaw: Needless Complexity in the Courts and 50 Ways to Reduce It. And that is the cover. Can any of you tell me why? Do any of you get the joke with having a very disgruntled-looking Oliver Wendell Holmes on the cover? I hope that the pub sheet doesn't give it away. With American institutions under attack, now is the time to strengthen them. Yet a judicial system that was slow has gotten slower. Court decisions that have been hard to understand have in many cases become indecipherable. Judges often get rid of cases for technical reasons, or force litigants to settle rather than issue a decision. Lawsuits needlessly cost more than ever and produce unsatisfactory results. In this book, Connecticut Superior Court Judge Thomas Muchhauser aims to spark a much-needed conversation about court reform and makes the compelling argument that we can rebuild faith in the courts by focusing lawsuits on the parties to a case rather than on the labyrinthine legal process that now dominates the American lawsuit. This book proposes 50 changes from the filing of a complaint in court to the drafting of appellate decisions. Fascinating. So I don't know. I'm curious to know how many of you have had any kind of run-ins with the American law system, and whether or not this has been your experience, that it's badly bent over and needs to be straightened up and fixed. This will be fascinating. This will probably go on the list for tonight. And I'm wondering, off the top of my head, I'm wondering if Judge Muchhauser might be willing to talk with me on camera about this. I'll have to check with the publicist and see. And then we have, we're getting close to the end, don't you worry here. We have something here that is not a new release. It was a new release. Instead, I harvested it from a little free library because it's time for a reread. This is Amor Towles, and this is The Lincoln Highway with an unremovable sticker there. Nice, big, thick, generous novel that I really liked. I liked it. It disappointed me a little when I read it in the ARC, and then I read the finished copy and liked it a good deal more. And I wonder if that trajectory will just continue with a reread. I will put this on the rereading docket for this coming week and see. This is an author who never really disappoints. As an author who ignores, first of all, commercial decisions, and that very much applies to the new book, which is set in the world of Rules for Civility. You would think that is a purely commercial cash grab. But I know better than to suspect this author of that. This is an author who writes big, complex books according to his own lights. The other example I could come up with would be Mark Helprin. An author who's just developed a following to the point where he can write what he wants and they will give it a try. I'm certainly in that following, and I'm eager to give this another try. I figure the little free library probably served it up to me for a reason. And then finally, we'll finish up here before I lose the light completely with a finished copy of something we've already seen. This is Guzel Yakina from Europa Editions. This is a Volga Tale. A nice hefty hardcover from Europa Editions. In the late 18th century, Catherine the Great, Empress of Russia, invited Europeans to settle in distant and deserted territories of the Russian Empire. Over 100 German colonies emerged along the Volga River during the decade that followed, eventually recognized as the German Soviet Republic, a closed and confined world within a world. These two worlds clash when schoolmaster Jakob Bach falls in love with a student, Clara Grimm, from across the Volga River, a forbidden and scandalous affair. And I have the advanced copy of this thing, and I have just ignored it. I don't know why. I'm pretty sure this is an October release, or maybe even September, but I need to get to this right away. I'm going to want to give it at least a couple of reads, so I need to get to it. So there you go. As the light fades, we have just a pile of random books, some new, some old, that I thought I'd show you. We have A Volga Tale, The Lincoln Highway, The Common Law, Flaw. We have Song, A History of Song. We have In the Shadow of Fear, a sort of a narrative look at 1950, the year 1950. After Eden, A Short History of the World, in parentheses, Your Grandparents Were Horrible People. We have Becoming Ella Fitzgerald, and 2 epic collections. The Fantastic Four, The Crusader Syndrome, and Thor, Even an Immortal Can Die. So kind of dumb titles, but great issues. And finally, Jason, by Henry Treese, his retelling of Jason and the Argonauts, which is a favorite story for writers to retell. So there you go. Just a random Friday selection of books. So I'm going to wrap this up before these clouds roll in completely, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.